It's Chris, you're seeing here back from C&H Mullins for another informative repair video. The video right now deals with a customer's chainsaw they brought over here. Guy actually brought over this morning. I'm giving you a review of what needed to be done with the customer. Initially told me that this saw, you see right in front of me here, it is a, where's it at here? It's a Homelite. 38cc, as you see from the side. I actually took the top cover off. It had the Homelite badge on top of it on here, and I don't have it with me right now. But the customer was claiming that the machine was hard starting. The machine wasn't starting at all, and he wanted to have it checked out. So the customer actually bought a tune-up kit for this machine, and he said he put a new spark plug, new air filter, new primer bulb supposedly on as well too, and that didn't seem to make any difference, so he brought it over to us and we checked it out over here, and we found out that the engine had good spark. The compression was below 90 psi. I say the threshold for most two-strokes is about 98 psi. Anything below, I'd say about 90, 95, you're running on like basically borrowed time with your two-stroke, and the machine should probably either be rebuilt, or you have to buy a new engine, or just buy a whole new machine, because these chainsaws like this one right here, I think they're about 140 to 160 bucks. I think on was it Harbor? It wasn't Harbor Freight. It was Home Depot. That's what it was. I think. What we found on here, he had excessive scoring on the exhaust side. You can actually see that. I should say the exhaust side with the mufflers, that it was all like a light dark type of gray, depending on where you look at exactly on there, which means the machine was running really hot. And we also noticed it looked like he may have had basically lean mix in there too, possibly as well. But there's no really way to really test what the ratio is for gasoline. You can just look at it and see how clear it is or how not clear it is for that. And usually the darker stuff has a darker mixture, which is usually maybe 32 to 40 to 1, where the clearer stuff is like almost like a light blue aquamarine, almost like a green fluorescent type. It might be like a 50 to 1 or maybe a 75 to 1. And for like Opti 2 mix out there, like the synthetic blend, call it the mix, the synthetic mix oil you put in your machine that's smokeless. And I'll show you what this thing actually looks like inside here. His compression, this one, I almost forgot that it was only about 40, 45 on here. It was half of what the threshold is for most of these two-strokes out here. So I'll show you what it looks like here, and you can see what the damage is from running your machine with low or like hardly any oil in the gas, because your oil and gas have to be mixed, and if you don't have the proper oil rating in there for your mixture, your engine's lubricity, it doesn't have enough lubricity to keep the parts clean and able to lubricate them properly, because these engines do not have crankcases that have oil in them. The oil and the gas mixture lubricates all the parts that it comes in contact with, so you have to keep that into consideration when you have two-stroke engine out there, because if you don't keep the mixture right, you can possibly burn your engine out there, or if it doesn't burn up your ports. If you run a real rich mixture, your ports can clog up on there like a lawn boy does, and your ports can basically narrow down like a clogged artery. And sometimes that carbon that builds up on the ports on these machines, whether it be a chainsaw, string trimmer, the lawn boy lawnmower with a 3-port design on the bottom, it has 3 holes for the ports on there, and those ports get clogged up. Some of that stuff can actually fall back down inside the cylinder on there, and can start scraping away on the cylinder, the piston, the rings, and you can cause scoring by that. And that's one reason why I always recommend Opti 2 mix for all my equipment over here. We are a dealer for it, so I can sell it basically to anybody who wants to possibly buy for that. And I use it myself exclusively for all my steel chainsaw, my steel string trimmer, my Sears leaf blower too. So I used it for a minimum of about 2 years before I actually started selling to people who actually wanted to buy it, because I wanted to make sure it was going to do what it said it did for the actual website before I gave it to people, so I can have a track record from my own personal conscience that the stuff was going to do what it's going to say it does. So what I did was I went out and bought a Sears leaf blower about 2 or 3 years ago, and I used the Opti2 mix in it for the past about 2 or 3 years already, and the ports are clean. There's no buildup on the piston ring, stuff like that. The cylinder skirt looks okay. Or I should say the piston skirt looks okay. There's no abnormal wear, tear, nothing like that on her. The port's nice and clean. But the one thing is I do run my leaf blower 1% full bore the whole time, so there's basically no chance for anything to really accumulate on the exhaust port for it. So it's not like where your chainsaw, you might be maybe you start up and let it idle for maybe 5, 10, 15 minutes if you're cutting between trees and stuff like that. Your leaf blower and your chain or your string shriver should be running full blast all the time to try to minimize problems with the wear from carbon buildup on here. Because I had a customer 4 or 5 years ago, Mr. Dansko. He passed away recently, I think about a year or two ago, and he had a one of those real cheap Featherlight. He was a Homelite or weed eater string trimmers, and he puttered around his yard quite some time with it. And the problem is his entire muffler system clogged up on here. The exhaust port was plugged. The muffler was completely plugged up with like a real oily carbon-based substance in there, and because of that, we had to have the ports cleaned. We actually cleaned them out 2 times, I think, in the past about a year and a half, because he ran the thing on low speed the whole time, so he didn't actually heat the engine up to get the engine nice and hot so it would burn off all that carbon buildup on the engine. So he just kept on puttering around his yard, and he didn't know that you have to keep the machine running at full speed so you can burn off all that carbon buildup. And if you don't burn all that carbon buildup, it can possibly fall back in the cylinder and score it up, or you can clog up your muffler and clog up your port for the exhaust on as well. So I'll show you the damage on this one right here, right now. Let me get this thing out here. Okay. Get this thing over here for you guys. Okay. Here we go. Here is the cylinder assembly itself right here. I'll give you a quick picture of this thing down inside here. You can see, let me see if I can shine that flashlight down just a bit. You can see right down inside there's some scratches on the cylinder wall down itself right there for that. And on the other side, the other exhaust port side here, I'll show you that as well. Let me get this thing out of the way here, if I can. Just pull this damn thing straight up out of there. There we go. Okay, that goes in just like that because of the fan position as it is. And here is your cylinder inside there. Now you can see right down inside there on the top of the piston right there, you can see scoring on it quite a bit, quite extensively I should say. Let me pull it over a couple times here so I can get a better picture aspect of it for you as well. Let me bring this thing back up. It's going back down. And it's going back up right there. There we go. That's good. That's a real good picture. So you can see right there. Let me get a small. There we go. Let me just shine it just a teeny bit like that. Now you can see it. You can see it's heavily scored, and it's actually scored so much where it looks like the piston itself and the piston ring partially weld themselves together right there, which causes the piston ring not to be able to spring out and push against the cylinder wall you see right there. And because of that, it looks like it's quite gray inside down there because of the engine running excessively hot. Anytime an engine runs excessively hot, it tends to turn the metal from like a shiny silver color that you would normally see on like a brand new engine to like a dull gray, metallic looking thing, or partially darker gray. It all depends on the severity of how hot the machine was actually running at the time. So let me see if I can hold this thing up here, and let me see, that's not going to work. Let me hold this thing over here like this possibly. That might make it work even better. Okay. Let me see here. I need a better picture for this. Sorry I can't get any better picture, but that's what it is. Let me pull it up and down in here. Now here's what the bottom of the piston looks like right there. It's still pretty much scored up down there too as well. You can see it there. It's pretty bad. And that's the bottom of the cylinder. So it looks like anytime you have like wearing a bottom of the piston, it can come from the intake possibly. I'm not rolling anything else out. Like a gasket got blown out in the bottom of the seal where it mates to the crank down there. But Most time you see the scoring on the bottom, like the engine usually sucks in some kind of particles from the outside, like the intake system, and stuff on the top is usually if it's either getting too hot, or sometimes the carbon breaks off on the piston because it means me pull this thing over one more time. Now you can see the top. See right at the top right there. That's basically top, right? It's, I should say, bottom dead center, but it's completely down and it's completely just exposed into the cylinder cavity right there for that. And you can see right here on the top, that's where it starts turning all gray right there, where the exhaust port is itself right there. And this one looks relatively clean where it's at. The only problem is it has a slight gray look to it on there for that, and the piston does too down inside there. And because of that, the machine is heavily worn and needs a new. It basically needs a new piston and new cylinder assembly in there for that to rectify the problem. So let me bring it back down here. You can see the top again, right there. There we go. That's probably the best picture I can make it right there for that. But that's basically what it looks like right there. You can see it. Let me shine that flashlight back and forth against it on there for you. And it looks like it's basically welded right to the sides on there, and that's what happens when the lack of lubrication or the engine gets too hot and or as exhaust particles break off on the exhaust port side. It can be any one of those combinations depending on the exact cause. So I personally recommend, if you have a chainsaw, run the machine full blast. I'd say maybe give it about 10 or 15 seconds to warm up in the morning whenever you're going out and cutting a tree or cutting logs up, or just let it warm up for about 10 or 15 seconds. And once it does that, just gun the piss out of it for about maybe 5 or 10 seconds to actually get the cylinder nice and hot in there, so it tends to burn off any carbon deposits. So, and once you're cutting it out there, you always cut it at full speed because you don't want your the clutch to drag on it and possibly burn up as well too. Because those clutches are designed to run at full speed all the time. They're not running designed half speed or quarter speed or 3/4 speed. Saws need to be running at 100% full speed output the whole time while you're cutting through logs or whatnot, because you have dogs that actually pop apart and go against a clutch drum in there to fully engage. So you gotta remember that whenever you're cutting your chains or cutting your wood, logs, or some kind of trees in your yard for you. If anybody has any questions, you know where I'm at here. Just give me a call back. You know my phone number, or if you want to leave a detailed message on my page here at YouTube, you can also do that as well. I'll see you guys.